We are back for our Spotlight series where we shine our light brightly on incredible initiatives that are working to drive the much needed positive change in STEM, in role modeling, in enhancing representation. And today, we're very excited to welcome Moxie, and I am joined by their inspiring founder. And we would love if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Ellie, for having me. I'm really excited. So I'm Eline and the founder of Moxie. We're gonna dive really into what Moxie is, what Moxie does, and why I started Moxie. But just as a little intro, I've worked my entire career in the consulting, finance, and tech industries. And I have seen firsthand the difference it makes when you have a role model or when you do not, when you have a mentor to show you the ropes or when you do not. With that information in mind, I started Moxie. A little bit more about me. I live in Amsterdam most of the years. I tend to skip this a little bit when it's winter to go to Cape Town and Sydney and sunnier places in the world, but I'm mostly in Amsterdam.
Let's talk Moxie. What is Moxie?
Moxie is a career acceleration platform that is helping women in the first decade of their careers to really accelerate their career. And what I mean with that is whether you're just starting out, whether you're already a bit more senior in your IC role, whether you're just become a people manager, whether you want to change your career, like Moxie is there to offer you basically everything you need in all of these phases in your early career. At the moment, our main product is actually our cohort-based courses. So what we do is we bring courses that are created by women leaders and really senior women, women who have walked the walk. Also cool women, like you look up to them and you're like, wow, she knows her shit and I want to be a little bit like her, right? Like really inspiring women. We bring all of their knowledge together into our 6-week courses, and they are cohort based. So it means that you are going through these courses together with a group of peers. And so what we've seen so far is that the participants really see huge career changes after doing this course, because not only do they get like the actual unhinged advice, like things that you normally wouldn't really see in traditional courses like leadership training, but also the unique way of learning, because we combine on demand and live, and we combine self-learning and learning with peers. So you have your accountability partners, you have your one-on-one live check-ins with the cohort expert, you have the live sessions with the group. Like there's so many ways that we really combine all this advice and these learnings to really actually make it actionable and to make sure that you actually do it, that you stay accountable.
For you, founding Moxie, what kind of sparked that idea? What was that moment where you decided we need this?
So as I mentioned quickly in my intro, I have worked in a lot of different industries. I've worked in corporate, I've worked in startups, skillers. So I saw sort of everything. And I remember, especially at the beginning of my career, my corporate career, I was looking up, like corporate careers can be seen a bit as a ladder, right? I was looking up, looking at the senior women and just realizing like, I never want to be like them. Like that is just not interesting to me, which straight away, of course, made me feel a bit like, what am I doing then in this career, right? So I moved around a bit, and quite early on in my career, I found out, oh, I actually really want to be an entrepreneur. So that has been a little bit my focus for, I could say, the past 5 years. But then knowing that you want to be an entrepreneur, it's like, what are you entrepreneuring in? What sort of business are you going to start? So I actually want to dive into that a little bit, because maybe some of your listeners find it interesting as well, because I've had some learnings. So I've basically spent the past like 5 years having my 5 to 9 before my 9 to 5, really looking into business ideas and like what could it possibly be, and then validating them, doing some research around it, like doing interviews with people, like really looking for that core thing, like what I would like to build, right? And so I kind of learned a couple of things. First, you need to really find a problem, and not like a problem to the solution that you came up with, like really a problem that is really deep and innately there, right? And then secondly, you need to figure out how people are currently solving that problem. So what are they doing right now to basically overcome that problem that they are having? And you need to find a way that basically 10x's making it like easier for them to solve the problem in that way. If you cannot do that, your idea, your business is not going to be really working well. And then the third one, I think, is will people actually pay for this? So these are the three things that you need to keep in mind when starting a business. And then I think the last one, a bit of a bonus one, is am I the right person to do this? Do I have some unique experience? Do I have some unique skill set to actually make this work? So I've dabbled with quite a lot of business ideas before Moxie. And I've learned that a lot of these, I was missing one or two of these pillars, basically, so to say. So I've just spent so much time in my life and my career and really looking for that like big business idea, basically, to yeah, really start my entrepreneurial journey. And it got a little bit obsessive. I'm a bit of a pusher instead of letting things happen. So at one point, 2.5 years ago now, I was actually in Cape Town, skipping winter. And I was so obsessed with like, need to start a business that I just wasn't even enjoying being there. And then it kind of hit me like, what am I doing? Like, I'm sort of like letting my life sort of waste away just because I'm so obsessed with something. Why don't I just yeah, spend some time to actually enjoy this and also just trust the universe a little bit more. Like the right moment will find the right problem will find me at the right moment. And that to me then was a bit woo-woo. I wasn't really into the whole manifestation and like let the universe bring you things. But now I think I've done a real 180 on that. Because I did actually just let it go, enjoyed my time there, and just really didn't really think about those business things anymore. And shock horror. Oh gosh. I was hiking up Table Mountain and suddenly it just really hit me. Like there's just, what am I looking for that big problem constantly? Like there is one problem I have been facing my entire career. I have worked in male-dominated industries my entire career. I have had no female role models in that sense, women I could look up to and learn from. So I was really figuring this out on my own and by myself. So I spent a lot of time and a lot of money on like reading the books, listening to the podcasts, going to those traditional leadership trainings, like even like individual creators really diving into it. I spent so much time and money basically on like helping myself to accelerate in my career. And I must say I was quite successful. Like I've gone through my career quite fast. I've got promotions quite fast. So I knew I was kind of good at it, but it took me so much headspace and so much time. So then I realized while I was at Table Mountain, I was like, why was I pushing so hard? It has been there in front of me all the time, you know? Like this is something I kind of want to say like I was like meant to do this. Like that's how it really felt. So super excited, ran down a Table Mountain, really, really excited. And then I actually tripped and fell, broke my elbow, had to go into hospital, spent 3 days in a hospital, got some complications, spent weeks being like really homebound actually. And I just feel then I felt like, ooh, this sucks. But looking back, I'm like, no, that even was still a kind of the universe telling me like, take some more time, like think it through. You don't have to jump, you don't have to run, you don't have to go faster. Just like let it sink in for a little bit. So Cape Town is where it all happened. And a lot has happened. And then I got back to the Netherlands and I basically started sharing with friends, sharing with colleagues, ex-colleagues, interviewing lots of women like, hey, is this just my experience or is this something that everyone is dealing with? And that was basically how Moxie was born.
How funny, before we started recording, we said about how our ideas sometimes come in the places you don't expect, walking out at nature, hiking up a huge mountain. But that answer has always been there in front of you because it's a challenge that you've personally gone through. And I resonate a lot with that when you use your own adversities to try and pay it forward and help other people. And that concept that you took on when you look at the problem, think, how are other people doing it? How could you make that experience better? Are you the right person? Talk me through that thought process with Moxie.
The problem for Moxie is two or maybe even threefold. So we can look at this from a more global lens, and there it's quite easy to see we are still really struggling with advancing women in their careers. So, for the past decade, we have spent a lot of effort on getting more women into C-level. Somewhat successful. There's been a 65% increase. We're definitely not there yet, but there has been a lot of improvement. But in the same 10 years, not a lot has happened for women early career. So, there's only been a 7% increase for women moving up on the ladder, so to say, from like early career to manager to senior manager. That part, not a lot has changed. So it doesn't really take a genius to understand that if there's nothing changing at the beginning, we're running into a pipeline problem, right? Like there is no way that we can still have a lot of women into senior level, C-level executive roles if we don't have new like women like advancing in their career more early on into it. So that is a real problem that we are still facing and something that there is not a lot I think a lot of noise created around it yet. And really clearly, actually, you see that when you look at the really entry level. So entry level to manager level, we see that for every 100 men that get a promotion, only 81 women get that promotion as well. That's really early on. It's called the broken rung. Like, and it's basically like we've always thought like the sea level is just a problem, but it's actually really not. Like the broken rung really early on is such a big problem as well. And that problem is just translating into like basically a bigger problem in every like every step along the way, because there's this thing that we call affinity bias, and it basically means that you just really like and trust people that are like yourself. If your entire senior team is men, it's a lot easier for them to promote other men than it is for them to actually promote other women. So it is a real systematic issue and it just sort of keeps going. So that's a big problem. It is a little bit difficult to just solve that problem though. And I am under no illusion that like I by myself will solve that entire global problem. So if you look at it from more like, okay, then what is in my control? What is something that I can do? Then we get more to that individual problem or like the problem statement, so to say. And that is that for women, it is quite difficult to advance in their careers. It's quite difficult to learn the crucial workplace skills if no one teaches you that at uni or wherever you got your education. When you are surrounded by people that do not look like you and behave different and like are just differently wired, it is quite difficult to be your authentic self, but also play the rules of the game or however you want to call it to actually advance. Like, how do you even do that? And all of this in like a time where you're still pretty young and still figuring out who you are as well, right? So, on an individual level, this is actually quite difficult as well. And then thirdly, one that I did not expect when I came up with this on the mountain basically is when I started doing a lot of interviews with managers as well, and especially male managers and also more senior leaders and even founders and executives. A lot of male managers, senior leaders actually do realize and do even see that women in their team sometimes struggle more with speaking up or like feel less confident sometimes than the men in their team. But they also feel like it's not really my place to mansplain them how to do that. So if I could find a way where I can help them as a mentor, but also they have something else that will help them with more like women-led, help them to advance in their careers, that would really take a huge burden off me as well. So that was actually a third problem I didn't even know existed.
What else were some of the themes that you uncovered from those interviews that then led you to shape Moxie to what it is today?
From the interviews, the most shocking thing for me was the male allies part. Like that I had never really even considered. And from the interviews with more women, I learned two things. Well, no, I learned a lot, but two I will share. I learned way more, but two I will share. One is if you are in a toxic environment, whatever Moxie or anyone is going to teach you is not going to propel your career. You need to get out of that. You need to recognize a toxic environment. If your manager, especially early career, doesn't have your best like interest at heart, then forget about it. You need your manager to advocate for you, like especially early in your career. If they will not do that if there is like a bad relationship between the two of you going on and it's not fixable. You can learn whatever you want, but it's not going to work. I saw that a lot with women that were trying to make the most out of a situation that is just like, I guess, a toxic relationship. It's just not working. You need to get out. That's the only solution. Another thing I learned is that when you really dive deeper and keep on asking questions and really dive like into the core sort of like things people struggle with, a lot of it comes down to confidence. And especially I'd say professional confidence, which I think can be a little bit different. There's a lot of women that I see and interviewed that are super confident when you put them like at a party and you see them and you're like, wow, they're so cool. But then, like when they're in a boardroom or a senior leadership meeting, they just feel small and they don't really feel that confident. So that professional confidence is something that a lot of women struggle with, especially women in male-dominated industries. And I actually had a funny learning this year as well, speaking about the outside of the work thing, about professional confidence. And I've learned that at my Pilates classes. Because I feel like we've always said this, like, and I also saw it, like the professional confidence women struggle with a little bit more than men. But I always thought it's just because of an innate thing that women are less confident maybe than men. But when I look at my Pilates classes, which is 99% women, somehow all beautiful women, super confident, know exactly what to do. They speak the language of Pilates as well. Like your teacher will say, like, I don't know, go into teaser, and everyone's like, oh, I get it, right? And then once in a while, a guy comes in, probably through ClassPass, doesn't know what he signed up for. And then I see even the most like cool, like outside still calling tech bro guys, like walk into that studio and also their confidence just drops. Why? Because they are surrounded by women that do seem to be very confident, that do speak the language, that do really feel at home at that place and really show their confidence as well. And suddenly you're the odd one out. So I do definitely think that confidence is not just something that it's definitely not something that's like an innate thing you're born with or not. Confidence is something that you can absolutely learn. But also confidence is just something that is more difficult when you're surrounded by people who do not look anything like you. If you're surrounded by people that seem to know really what they're doing and you feel like you do not. So confidence is a really, really big theme for all of the Moxie courses, actually, all of the Moxie content.
It's like a muscle, confidence. You have to just keep working at it in order to build it and to grow. And like you say, it is something that can be learned. It is a skill. So I'm wondering at Moxie, how do you, or what are some ways that you really try to integrate that learning for professional confidence through the courses that you do?
For Moxie, we view confidence, and actually the first 2 weeks of the courses is really focused on confidence only, actually. I think confidence is something you can tackle in a lot of ways, but I'll just give the three most important ways I think that you can really grow your confidence. First is just to, by the way, understand that confidence indeed is a muscle you can grow, right? And it's really a neuroscience thing. You can actually create new neural pathways to have that like higher self-belief, believe in yourself more, to actually feel more confident, be more confident, all of that. So it's really something, as you said as well, you can work on it. What you need to do to grow your confidence is one, really work on those neural pathways, basically. So work on your thoughts. So really recognize when it's your inner critic speaking up versus when you are just doing something out of your really innate what you're good at, like your power, basically your superpowers. So the recognizing your inner critic and basically also recognizing that it's there to protect you, but talking back and saying thank you, but I've got it, I don't need the protection right now. Like the thought process is a very important thing. We focus on that a lot, actually. The second one is you can't be what you can't see, or the other way around, it's easier to be when you can see. And that is to basically find yourself expanders, find yourself role models, women that you look up to, that you see yourself a little bit in, or that you resonate a little bit with, and really deep dive into what they are doing so that you can learn from their behavior. So really dive into what are they wearing, how are they talking, like what things are they saying, what things are they not saying, like really channel basically your inner leader, like give it a name, maybe even just the name of that person, and like really get a bit of, in that sense, like a view of like this is what I could be as well. Um, so we've got the inner critic, like the thoughts, talk back to your inner critic. We've got the like expanding, seeing the role models. And then the third one really is just doing things. And I mean, it is a little bit, I guess, overused to just do it. Unfortunately, not our slogan. But it really is just doing things. So it is progress over perfection or action over outcome, however you want to say it. But it means that, for example, a lot of women talk in a way that kind of diminishes their leadership skills. So they'll say, maybe, potentially, or does that make sense? Or I think that we could, or like belittling themselves actually a little bit. That is an excellent doing one. You can literally just not do that anymore. You can literally just every day remind yourself to not do that. Like go and do a challenge, like set yourself a goal for the next 30 days or whatever to just stop doing that. And the same is when you look at role models. For example, I had one role model and she really talked with her hands a lot. I now actually learned the science about talking with your hands. It's very interesting. I can send you a link because it's actually really good. But seeing her do that and like seeing her talk like this, it really made me realize that she came across quite confident. So I was like, maybe I should talk a little bit more with my hands. And that's just a doing thing. You can just start like doing that one day, right? Even if you don't really feel ready yet, you can just start doing those micro behaviors to really grow your confidence.
I love that in the first 2 weeks, Moxie is focusing purely on that. So important. Could you share a breakdown of the courses that are available for our audience?
So currently we've got 4 courses available. The first course is for junior ICs, individual contributors. So that's basically if you're not really managing a team yet. Then the other course is if you're a senior IC, so you're like 5+ year into your career, but you're not managing a team per se. Also because we really want to focus on how important it is to basically be a senior IC. I think a lot of the times we're thinking that to advance in your career, you have to manage people, but I really think that's bullshit. The world needs so many great operators, so it's really, really good if you're actually more senior and really good at operating like an IC role. So that's the senior IC one. Then we have becoming a people manager, which is really for all new managers out there. It's basically, for me, I always say it's the course I wish my managers would have had. Because it's just wild to me, like you are a great IC and then at one point, because of that, you're promoted to being a people manager, which is a completely different new skill set. And no one is teaching you how to do it. I think that's just such a wild concept. And suddenly you're managing people, no one is explaining you how to do it. So we do. And we help you to feel confident when doing it as well. Because there's also a large part of that that's just like, okay, like suddenly I'm managing what used to be my peers. That does something to your confidence as well. So we focus on that as well. And then the last one actually was a little bit of a passion project for me. It is the one called career design, and it is about like basically designing your own life in your career. It's just because I have noticed it firsthand, but also with a lot of friends around me, that a lot of women between 25 and 30 are struggling a little bit with what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Is this what I want to be doing? A lot of the women know that what they're currently doing is not really what they would like to be doing for their rest X amount of years, but they don't know what it is that they would like to be doing. So we know what we don't want, but we do not know what we want. So we're focusing on that one as well. So those are the 4 courses available now.
Taking the interviews that you did, the research that you did, and looking at how other courses work and operate, how have you taken all of that and tried to intertwine it into Moxie to enhance the experience times 10 for the people who are joining your cohorts?
Right now, of course, we live in a world where all the content is basically available for you, right? So if you want, you can spend hours and hours and hours really researching everything yourself, and the content will be available there. It's also how I actually solved the problem for myself, right? I spent hours and hours and hours reading books, listening to podcasts, doing leadership training, like spending time looking at individual creators. So there are solutions out there, but what we notice is that a lot of these solutions are not very efficient to actually getting you to solve the problem. And one is because it is quite difficult to know whether content is good content or like not so good content. And I mean, like a podcast, we are both doing podcasts, but everyone and their mothers can do a podcast. So you don't necessarily know if this is actually going to advance your career, right? When we look at books, I see a lot of great books, but very often written by very senior leaders. Like, there's not a lot of 30 somethings that are like, yeah, well, I am actually going to write a book now about how to advance your career. So, the advice you'll get from books is good, but usually a little bit like older fashioned, I guess, so to say. It's like written by people that are like 40 years ahead of you instead of just 10. Leadership training is the same. It's very traditional usually, like really focusing on traditional leadership skills. So we were really missing that. What is that one thing that you do within 6 weeks, is quality content that actually you have people holding you accountable so that you actually do it, that you learn, like you get to know some new people, you get to know some new peers, and that you have some one-on-one as well so that you can really talk through your individual problems. So that is really what we're trying to do at Moxie, what we're doing at Moxie, like bringing all of these things together to ensure that it really is the best learning environment and the best way to book results, really.
Because it can also be quite overwhelming. There's so much out there, there's so much content to consume. Sometimes it can be almost like there's so much, where do I start? Where do I begin? So to have a comprehensive, broken down program that's going to guide you through, almost hold your hand, and you're going to build a support system with that, meet new people. This is so important. And I wish I had Moxie many years ago, to be honest.
Same.
It would have been just transformative. How can folks get involved? So if they want to jump on a cohort, what's the steps that they need to take?
If you listen to this and you're like, oh, I recognize myself in this story. I mean, the first 10 years of my career, and I am like really ready to work on my professional confidence. I want to speak up and lean in and all the things that they say on the podcast, but no one tells me how to actually do. If that's you, then really jump on a course basically ASAP. We're starting cohorts again in March. So if you just go to the website, I guess you maybe can link underneath the episode. Yeah, so it's getmoxie.io, Moxie with IE. And then you can just sign up and really get ready to be in the cohort that is launching in March again. If you want to help us a little bit more, we're a really small startup at the moment. We're really starting out. So if you know people who this could be interested for, then it really would help us so much as well if you can just refer the website and refer it to people that you think it could be interesting for. And if you happen to stumble across this episode and you're a very senior leader and you're like, well, I actually know a lot of things that worked or didn't work in my career and I want to share about that, please also get in touch with us, because we're still learning and we're ever evolving and really learning the new insights from women that really have walked the walk. So I'd love to do a chat with you then as well.
Yeah, I'm putting all the links in the description box. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you, because again, I can imagine there's a long list. We'll probably be here 4 hours. But if you had to give just one piece of advice to a woman who's ready to take control of their career growth, but again, the confidence piece is getting in the way. Outside of course, joining Moxie, what's like a mantra that they can try and live by or tell themselves that could help with their progression?
Wonderful question. Indeed, it is joining a course, but I'll let that one slip away. I think the number one thing you can do basically today is find those expanders, find those role models for yourself. So if you do not have that in your company, you can look on LinkedIn and find women that you admire. You can literally even get the energy from someone's social media. So if you see someone on Instagram, like do a bit of a deep dive, find some women that you look at that inspire you, that you think, wow, like I want to be like you a little bit, like in 5 years. It doesn't have to be the whole persona, but maybe because of their confidence or maybe because of the industry they're in. Like it can be like parts of what they're doing that really inspire you. But find yourself a group of, let's say, 5 to 8 women that really inspire you, because that is the fastest way to grow. Like what you surround yourself with is what your brain is going to normalize, and it's what your brain is going to see that is what is possible for you as well. So if there's one thing you can do and it doesn't cost anything, it's just find yourself women to really surround you with. And if you want to go a step further, reach out to them. Like a lot of women are really happy to help, to have a little bit of a chat with you. Reach out to them, just send them a little message on LinkedIn, basically asking them, hey, can I schedule a chat with you? I would love to learn from your journey. And then just ask them a couple of questions about their journey. That's the fastest way to really prove to your brain, like, see, this is possible. I kind of love the whole TikTok trend of the Lulu is the Sululu, which is already not a trend anymore, but I'm a boomer when it comes to TikTok. But it really is a little bit in this case. Like, just like really deluluing yourself with what is possible is really gonna help you with your confidence. So that's the number one thing I would advise everyone to do right now. An easy trick, basically.
Thank you so, so much. It's been amazing to shine the spotlight on the wonderful things that you're doing at Moxie.
Thank you so much for having me. I love to share about all of this. Thank you so much.